3 minutinhos.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry about the delay. We had some Instagram issues.
Technical issues.
Yeah, technical issues.
All solved now.
Yeah, also but now. And we are ready to start one more meeting of the Allan Kardec Spirits Group of New Zealand. Today we have just one news that's not as news as last week, but it's just a reminder. So in April, we have the first uh, Spirit Month, World Spiritist Month, and we're going to be celebrating the Spirit's book. So because of that, it was launched on April. We are going to be having a lot of lectures around the world. It's more than 50 countries, and all along the month of April, we're going to be having those lectures available on the, what is the name? The FEAL. So,
File.
yeah, Fundação. Yeah, so we're going to be. We have
our page.
Yeah, it's on the group page, and we have all the details there. I already watched the first lecture. It was really good, and it was in German, so it was really nice. So I recommend everyone, if you have a spare time, to watch. And yeah, that's it. Anything else?
No, not in terms of the.
Cool. So today I will be reading our inspirational reading, and then after that I will be doing the initial prayer. So the book is The Living Spring, and lesson 8, attentive workers. But the one who always strives to abide by the perfect law of freedom, who does not neglect what he has heard, but does it, he will be blessed in all that he does. James 1:25. Above all else, disciples of the good news, those who really follow the Master, understand their responsibilities and render sincere reference to the law of liberty, knowing full well that they will reap what they have sown. They know that judges are held accountable to the court, administrators will answer for their duties, workers will be responsible for their obligations, and all persons working for progress and order, for the light and the good in their own situation, persevere in making use of the abilities they have received from divine providence, attentive to the lessons of the truth, and devoted to the good workers entrusted to them by the higher powers of the earth. Characterized by such attitudes, Christ's collaborators, whether statespersons or janitors, will be fulfilling their duty in the area in which they are to act and serve, and naturally as they interact with oxygen in the process of breathing. Not by the fragrance of odorless flowers, not by the attractive aroma, thank you, not by the repulsive smell. No tree is known or admired for its outward appearance, but for its fruit and usefulness and its productivity. The same is true of our spirit on its journey. Nobody who is truly committed to the truth will testify on our behalf by what we seem to be, by the superficiality of our life, by the epidermis of our attitudes or individual expression perceived and present, but by the essence of our collaboration on the shared road progress by the weight of our cause in the overall good. By the fruit you shall know them, said the Master. By our deeds we shall be known, we repeat.
Some music?
Yes, please. Dear God, lovely Master Jesus, superior spirits here present, would you like to ask permission to start one more meeting of the Allan Kardec Spirits Group of New Zealand? Let's calm our hearts. Let's connect with the good spirits. Let's open our mind to receive all the knowledge that will be teaching here today, that we can have a lovely evening and be better than we were before getting here today. Stay with us for always. So be it.
So
Cool. Yeah, so today we will start a new chapter on the Gospel. Let me just go back. Exit. I believe it's chapter 22, right?
22, I think.
Yeah.
That's right.
So just a minute. So that's a short chapter,
Yeah, very
but
short, right?
it's
Unusual.
important
Yes.
as always.
I can read it.
So, do you need a recap from the last week, or we can start again today?
When we start fresh, yeah, we don't need.
Cool. Chapter 22. Do not separate what God has joined. The indissolubility of marriage. The Pharisees also came to him in order to test him, saying to him, "Is it permitted for a man to divorce his wife for whatever reason?" He responded to them, "Have you not read that he who created man at the beginning created them male and female, and that he said, 'For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh only. Hence they shall no longer be two, but one flesh only. Therefore let no man separate what God has joined.'" They said to him, "But then why did Moses command that the husband give his wife a letter of separation and divorce her?" He responded to them, "It was because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses permitted you to divorce your wives, but in the beginning it was not like that. I also declare to you that who divorces his wife, except in case of adultery, and marries another, commits adultery, and that he who marries the wife that another divorced also commits adultery. There is nothing immutable except what has come from God. Everything that is the work of humans is subject to change. The laws of nature are the same at all times and in all countries. Human laws change according to time, place, intellectual progress. In marriage, what is of divine order is the union of sexes to carry out the replacement of people who die. However, the conditions that govern this union are of an order that is so human that throughout the entire world, even throughout Christendom, there are no two countries where such conditions are completely the same, nor is there one where they have not undergone change over time. The result is that, in the eyes of civil law, what is legal in one country and at a given time is adulterous in another country and at a different time. This is because civil law is meant to regulate families' interests, and these interests vary according to customs and local needs. Thus, it is, for example, that in certain countries, only religious marriage is legal, in others, a civil marriage is also required, in others, Finally, a civil marriage is enough by itself. Nevertheless,
Stop there and comment a little bit.
Yeah.
So we read the parable first, the gospel passage, and then the first explanation of the spirits. Do you want to comment?
you can start.
Okay. So it's interesting here that first there was like a different law. So in the beginning, it was the name of the chapter, "Do not separate what God has joined," and they think that not they think, but it was meant to be. So every time that you get together in a marriage, like they are saying here, we shouldn't be splitting. But when we got the justice law with Moses, they say no, you can't have the divorce, and then they asked the same for Christ, and they said no, we have this because back then, or because of your, how can they say? They say here they use like
Which one?
rash or something like that because.
Rational or
What it is?
hardness?
Yeah, hardness.
The
Yeah,
hardness
because
of
of the
their
hardness of
hearts.
the heart. So
Yeah.
we are not evolved yet to understand that this connection between two souls are not on just the material level. It's on the spiritual level as well. And there are a lot of energy involved on that relationship. So because of the hardness of the heart of the men back on Moses, it wasn't possible. That's why they established the divorce. So it's better to split when it's not working than keeping that union in like in a better shape. So both of parties were not going to be able to enjoy that time or to use the time to evolve to become a better person. That's why Jesus said that in these cases it's better to have the divorce than not doing anything. And then he's explaining here in the first part that the connection is the divine connection. So everything that's nature according to the God's law, not the paper that you sign to validate your marriage between the in the human world. So that's what they are saying when they are talking about that you cannot split because it's the nature's law that when the two people get together, you're going to exchange the fluids and can lead into a new life, and that's the nature. And it's not what they are saying here is not the marriage that you go to the civil union. I don't even know
Civil
the
union?
name. Yeah, and then you sign a paper, and now you're married, or you go to the church and have the
Ceremony.
the ceremony. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, that's it. Do you want to comment?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting how, again, bring us the laws of nature or the divine laws. They are unchangeable. So they are the same all the times in all countries, but the human law, they change a lot. So even nowadays, we can see different countries, they have different laws. Some countries, not sure if nowadays, but back in the day, a man could have many wives at the same time, depending on their material power or money. But that's the human doing. So the divine is completely different. But definitely, if a union is a union of hearts, is a union without any material interest, any personal interest, then it's a real one. But of course, because we are in this planet and there are many different laws and different levels, most of the marriages, many of the marriages are not going to have that real meaning. So that's why it's permitted, and in many times it's actually much healthier to have a divorce. There are cases of abuse. There are cases when people are being aggressive and hurting each other, not physically, sometimes even physically, but sometimes psychologically, and that's very damaging as well. So it's a matter of knowing and being aware that we are in this planet, so sometimes, or most of the times, we have to use the laws in here. And the marriage that is supposed to last are the ones that only with the ones that fits that law, that divine law that is done because of out of love and not out of other reasons. Otherwise, just something temporary and doesn't last. Yeah, but really interesting.
Yeah. So, anything else?
No, like you guys remember everything is just really interesting to see that the laws evolve according with time, place, and progress. So at that time, they needed to have the law like that. So imagine that today we understand that we need to marry someone that we love and blah blah blah. But imagine saying that to someone at that time. They cannot understand. Not all of them, but like almost all of them. It would be really hard for them to understand. And today you have some people that don't understand that. So imagine that period of time. So yeah, it's just interpreting the what Jesus said, not literally, and then you understand like why that would.
Yeah. Oh.
I can keep reading.
Thank you.
Nevertheless, in the union of the sexes, besides the divine physical law common to all living beings, there is another divine law, as immutable as all God's law, and exclusively moral, the law of love. God has willed for individuals to be united not only through the ties of the flesh, but also through those of the soul, so that the mutual affection of the spouses is extended to their children, and that there should be two instead of one to love them, care for them, and enable them to progress. In the conventional conditions of marriage, is this law of love taken into consideration? Not in the least. The affection of two individuals attracted to another by a mutual sentimental is not confirmed, and in the majority of cases, this affection is shattered for the sake of other interests. What is so is not the satisfaction of the heart, but satisfaction of pride, vanity, cupidity. In short, the satisfaction of all interests of a material nature. When everything is well according to such interests, the marriage is said to be suitable, and when the material assets are well matched, it is said that spouses are also suited for each other and known to be very happy. However, neither civil law nor the commitments that in it contracts can replace the law of love if it does not preside over the union. The result is that what has been joined forcibly separates on its own. That the oaths sworn at the altar become perjury if they are pronounced as a banal formal. As a consequence, they are the unhappy unions that end up becoming criminal, a double disgrace that could be avoided if within the marriage the only law that sanctions it in God's eye were not left out, the law of love. When God stated, the two shall become one of flesh only, when Jesus says, let no man separate what God has joined, one must understand the union according to the immutable law of God and not according to the changeable law of human beings. Is the civil law then superfluous, and should we return to marriage according to nature? Certainly not. The civil law is meant to regulate social relationships and family interests in accordance with the requirements of civilization. This is why it is useful and necessary but variable. It must be provident because civilized human beings cannot live like primitives. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prevents it from being a corollary of the divine law. Obstacles to the fulfillment of the divine law arise from social prejudices and not from civil law. Those prejudices, although still alive, have already lost much of their influence among enlightened cultures, and they will disappear altogether with the moral progress, which will finally open people's eyes to the countless ills, wrongs, and crimes that result from unions entered in solely out of material interests. And someday we will ask ourselves if it is more humane, more charitable, more moral to one another, two individuals who cannot live together, than to restore them their freedom, or if the perspective of an indissoluble chain does not increase the number of irregular units. So this part talks about pretty much what we started discussing before. That is like the union because to love each other, not because of material reasons. And we know that in the history, many couples were married, put together because the family thought that was better for them. And you know that usually that doesn't work properly, and it's really hard for them to get along together and to build up really a family, not just like a marriage and raise the kids. And it's like this mentioned in the text, it's really easier for the family to like grow together if they love each other instead of they just are together because the family wanted them to be together. So yeah, I think that helps. And as we mentioned before as well, if they're not happy, they can just search for the happiness instead of being together forever. Because this was what was said before.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's talking about another law, law of love, and that's what should be our goal getting to the marriage. Because you shouldn't be looking just for material stuff. Because if you're looking just for the looks of a person, for example, their appearance, that's something that's going to change along the time. And if you just focus on the material, or if the person is rich or has some possessions, things like that, something can happen and they can lose those possessions, and then you don't have anything else to hold you into that marriage. So that's why you have to start to get into the marriage with the love in mind. So you have to be loving another person to get into a relationship, think about the future of you always together. And they say that it's through the, I don't know this phrase in English, but when the priest say that through the good and the bad, I don't know how they say
The
that
health.
in English. Yeah, the health and the sickness and things like that.
Yeah.
So you have to think about that, because it's not just the material or the good phases of your life.
Yeah.
And you have to think that, okay, your marriage has to endure some difficulties, and it's not always good. So you have to conciliate, you have to give in sometimes. And it's really important that if you have your union based on the law of love, everything is going to be stable and is going to endure for more than one life, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
And then that's the first part about the love and the pursuit of the, not just the material thing. And then it was talking about some, one more, I believe.
Number 4.
Yeah. And then now it's talking about the necessity of that law to have that the human law across the marriage, because like Barbara was saying, sometimes you have some things that are from the old generation, like forced marriage, things like that. So you have to regulate that, because our understanding of God's law is going to increase, and then as that knowledge increase, we have to change the human laws to be more like as the God's law, adapt, yeah,
New
the God's law.
reality. I really like that part when it says that the mutual affection of the spouses is extended to their children, and there should be two instead of one to love them. So that's it's kind of related to what you said, like has to do with the progress. And if there is love, is going to help with the progress of the humanity, because that's passed on to the kids as well. Instead of a home or a family where the parents are always fighting because there is no love, that also affects the kids. And because marriage sometimes is very taking it something very lightly. People say, okay, I'm married and then I divorce. Doesn't really matter, I'll just try. It's something that can be, of course, nowadays that is the divorce. But I think we need to be really careful and think about, because even when there is real love between two people, there will be challenges because there are two different souls, different individualities, and you can have the most beautiful and big love, you're still gonna see the imperfections on the other person and vice versa. So living together, having the relationship is already a challenge. Without love, that becomes a much bigger and much harder challenge. So it's really everybody's responsibility before take on that challenge and really analyze before do that. Because okay, there is a divorce, but there is our responsibility of knowing how to choose and how to get into that, which is like it is a sacred institution. Marriage, it is an institution that sometimes doesn't work and people can get divorced, but we should do our best to not get to that point and really do or really commit to it when there is love. So I think it's an alert for all of us. Interesting. And now we get to the divorce.
I think we have time.
I think it is time because to read one more is just.
Yeah, it's too small.
Huh?
It's too small, the next one.
Yeah, that's right.
Divorce is a human law with the purpose of legally separating what is already separated in fact. It is not contrary to God's law, since it merely reforms what humans have stipulated, and is applicable only in cases in which the divine law has not been taken into account. If it were contrary to the divine law, the Church itself would have to consider as transgressors those of its leaders who, by their own authority and in the name of religion, have imposed divorce on more than one occasion. A double transgression, therefore, since it is practiced only with material interests in mind and not to satisfy the law of love. However, Jesus himself did not consecrate the absolute indissolubility of marriage. Did he not say, "It was because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses permitted you to divorce your wives"? This means that since the time of Moses, separation might have been necessary when mutual affection was no longer the sole objective of marriage. Jesus adds, however, but in the beginning was not like that, which means that at the origin of humankind, when people were not yet perverted by selfishness and pride, but lived according to God's law, unions were based on reciprocal sympathy and not on vanity or ambition. Thus, there was no room for divorce. Jesus goes even further and specifies the case in which divorce can have a place: adultery. Now, there is no adultery where sincere mutual affection reigns. It is true that he prohibits any man from marrying a divorced woman, but one must keep in mind the customs and characters of the people in those times. In cases of adultery, the Mosaic law prescribed stoning. Jesus wanted to abolish a barbaric custom. Hence, a penalty was needed, and he found it in the disgrace attached to the prohibition of a second marriage. It was, in some ways, one civil law replacing another civil law, by which, like all laws of such nature, had to endure to test of time. So I think this part continue what we were doing. It just mentioned like the logic behind the divorce. If we have like follow the logic, we understand that that's really needed. And if that was done like they mentioned in churches because of material reasons, that was not right. So this needs to be considered as well. And also, as he mentioned after, at the time of Moses, they need to have that law, like we mentioned before, and at the time of Jesus, he just replaced it like for a new one, because that was they needed at that time. So today we probably need a different way to analyze that. It's not the same because the time changed, and also everyone evolved at least a little bit. So yeah, so we need to consider from a different perspective as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting is the divorce is just it happens, and just because what was bringing them together in the divine law is already broken. So
Yeah.
the divorce is not like it's breaking the divine law. It's just formalizing what was already broken. And that's like basically a piece of paper that's going to say formally now you are splitted and you can follow your path and the other person will follow their own path. And yeah, that's really interesting what Barbara said because we are evolving. So before we needed the divorce because before was like stoning, so you're going to die. You're going to die if you commit adultery. So if you don't want to stay with your partner for the rest of the life, you have to die at that point. And Jesus said, no, you have to split, but then you are prohibited to marry again. Now we don't have that rule anymore. You can marry again, and it doesn't like it's not going to change anything on your life just because you married someone that was already married before. So there is no how can I say nothing bad is going to happen with you according to the human law. I know that can be prejudice, things like that, but according to the human laws, there will be nothing different for you. So you're going to be the same person. And that's something that we are evolving. And now we just need to understand to get to a place that to start the marriage thinking that it's going to be a successful. Sometimes I know that even if you have all the good intentions, sometimes it's not going to happen. So it's sometimes not a problem with you. Sometimes the other person is not wanting marriage. So you cannot do everything by yourself to make a marriage work. It needs to make the marriage work. So you have to be committed and the other person as well. And sometimes you are committed and it doesn't happen. So that's why we have divorce. So it's to help people that are committed, but sometimes it shouldn't be like that. You have other plans. So you have to move on. And that's why we have the marriage and for these cases. And if you are trying as hard as you can and it doesn't work, we have that option. And it's nothing that, okay, you cannot divorce and anything like that. Like it was saying in the beginning, because when I read that, so, oh, that's really bad if I divorce. But now we have that understanding that it's evolving, and if you are with the good intentions and it doesn't work, okay, let's move on. It's better for both of those people involved in that situation. And yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and sometimes the reason for divorce is because the reason to get married could be a temporary one. So you mentioned a little bit before, sometimes people marry because of the money or because of the appearance, the beauty, the youth. But these are temporary and they can change with time. And then if that changes, so people may not want to continue. But yeah, it's something for us to pay attention and reflect. But it's good to know that the laws, they do change and will change even further because they are human laws, but the divine laws, they will remain the same, and divine laws is always based on love. So if we want to do things right, if we just remember that, and for every action, every commitment, just put love above all, and then we'll be in the right pathway. Little nice chapter, eh? Little nice chapter. And the next one, oh, is that a continuation? Or
No, I was just trying to.
the little number of the.
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter because it's a
Yeah,
chapter.
the next is gonna be 23. Strange Morals. That's a very interesting chapter.
Yeah.
Or next week.
Now,
23.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. Now the Spirit's book.
yeah, now it's 49.
So, chapter 8. Choosing. Is it 8?
Yeah, chapter 8, this
Mhm.
line 49.
Item 49. What's the number of the question?
455.
Yeah, we are in a big question.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're in the middle.
are we like in the middle?
Yeah, it's too big.
459.
soul. Start with soul, soul
So
side.
maybe we just give a recap.
Yeah, it's one before. Yeah, so can
The emancipation of the soul.
I can keep reading.
I just want to recap.
Okay.
So it's been, I don't know, 6-7 weeks that we are in this chapter.
Has been a long time now.
The emancipation of the soul.
Yes.
And we talked about, amongst some things, so somnambulism, we talked about ecstasy, we talked about second sight. Now we got to that question that's a theoretical summary of somnambulism, ecstasy, and second sight. So it's going to be repeating everything that we said, getting into more details, explaining some situations. And then we talked a little bit about somnambulism and the state of the spirit on the somnambulism, that we have more freedom to act and to interact with the spiritual world. And now we're going to start talking about like the second side, and then go back and forth, and then we can keep discussing about that.
Do you know what paragraph this is?
I think
Is the first one?
on the second page, the second paragraph.
297.
Oh,
255.
Page 297. This one.
Okay, thank you.
Soul sight or spirit sight is not circumscribed and has no determinate seat, which explains why somnambulists cannot assign one particular organ to it. They see because they see without knowing why or how. As spirit sight does not have a specific site in the body. When they do refer to their body, sight seems to occur in the centers where the vital activity is greatest, especially in the brain, in the stomach area, or in the organs that for them is the most intense point of connection between the spirit and the body. The power of somnambulistic lucidity is not unlimited, however. Even when completely free, spirits are limited to their faculties and knowledge according to the degree of purification they have reached, even more so than when attached to and under the influence of matter. This is the reason why somnambulistic clairvoyance is neither universal or infallible. Its infallibility should be relied on even less the more it is diverted from the purpose proposed by nature in order to be transformed into an object of curiosity and experimentation. When the spirit of somnambulistics finds itself in a state of disengagement, it enters into communications more easily with other incarnate or disincarnate spirits. This communication is established through the mutual contact of the fluids comprising their perispirits and enabling the transmissions of thought like an electric wire. Somnambulistics, therefore, do not need thoughts to be articulated through words. Instead, they sense and divine them, rendering them eminently impressible and accessible to the influences of the mental atmosphere around them. That is also why a large group of spectators, especially of onlookers who are more or less ill-wild, essentially impairs the unfolding of their faculties, which close themselves off, so to speak, and do not unfold with full liberty as they would in more intimate or sympathetic surroundings. The presence of few wild, or antipathetic persons produces an effect on them similar to when a hand touches a sensitive plant. So somnambulists.
let's start a little bit.
Yeah, it's a lot of information.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start. So we start talking about the second side, and soul side, sorry. And
That might be the same.
yeah,
Actually, yes, you're right.
and it's saying that once again that there is no organ in the perispirit that's responsible for seeing things, so they can see everything. So So if you're focused on your one part of your person, you'll be able to perceive everything around it and even see, comprehend everything that's happening. Then it starts talking about the connection with the between the spirit and the body, and with the less connection you have, more freedom you have to act as your perispirit, and then you can interact with the incarnated, and your faculties are less limited. I know that even there is a small difference between a fully disincarnated spirit and a spirit on the state of somnambulism, but they have more freedom to communicate, and it doesn't need even words to be said to have that communication to happen. So even the thought is enough for them to communicate. So the thought is matter, and then by thinking something, they can express what they're thinking to another spirit, and the same thing can happen in the other way around. So those spirits can influence in your thoughts and send a message through those thoughts, and then you can understand that message and see, oh, that's a clear someone trying to communicate with me, or can be just I forgot the word, that you just feel that something, but you don't know that's from a spirit, but you think it's
like
from you.
intuition or
Intuition, yeah,
feeling.
thank
Yeah.
you. That's the word that I was looking for. And then it starts talking about that the mind or the thoughts of other people around that affect. So if now I think it's talking more about when you're in a somnambulistic state of an experiment or around other people, and then that people, depending on what they are thinking, they can influence on your somnambulistic state and can harmful, because sometimes they are thinking bad of you and thinking bad thoughts and sending that energy to you. And since you are in a state that you're more vulnerable to those energies, you'll be able to get more of those feelings and absorb everything.
That's a really good explanation. Thank you. Nothing to add. You explained it well.
I have just something I want to comment. I'm not too sure if I have the right concept, but for me, looks like, for example, if you are in a somnambulistic state and everything around you is not thinking good things and they are not aligned in the same energy as you are, is similar to like mediunic reunion, when you have the mediums that they need to keep thinking good things so then they can support the work
to
of
harmonize
the
the meeting, as in
Yeah.
the mediumship meeting is very important for everybody to be praying, to be in the same vibration.
Yeah.
But even though it is a serious mediumship reunion, that will be definitely like the spiritual group looking after. And even though some spirits can communicate and they might be in a suffering state or aggressive state, the medium is not going to be not damaged, but affected by it negatively. And even if he feels, the negative energy and everything, so the spiritual plan will make sure that medium recovers and give all the energy, and sometimes even the incarnated ones will give a pass, treatment, spiritual treatment. Yeah, so to not be, so then is no bad effects on the medium, but definitely everybody in the meeting needs to be in the same feeling and good thoughts to not make it worse or have any bad consequence for anybody. Yeah, but it's right what you say.
It's similar.
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah, that's it. More vulnerable.
Yeah. How much more should I go?
Do you want to continue?
Yes, I can.
So
Somnambulistics, right?
One or two more chapters.
Yeah.
One or two more paragraphs.
Okay.
And you can comment.
So we stop on somnambulistics, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Somnambulistics see their own spirits and body at the same time. They are, so to speak, two beings that represent a double existence. spiritual and corporeal, blended together by the ties that unite them. Somnambulists do not always comprehend this situation, and such duality frequently makes them speak of themselves as though they were speaking of a stranger. What happens is that in one moment, the corporeal being speaks to the spirit being, and in the next moment is the spirit being that speaks to the corporeal. The spirit acquires an increased knowledge and experience during each one of its corporeal existence. It partially forgets them during its incarnation in dense matter, but it remembers them as a spirit. That's how certain somnambulists display knowledge superior to their degree of education and even superior to their apparent intellectual capacity. The possible intellectual and scientifically underdevelopment of somnambulistics in the wake state, however, does not allow one to prejudge anything about the knowledge they may reveal in the lucid state. According to the circumstances and objective they have in view, they may draw this knowledge from their own experience, from their clairvoyance of current events, or from the counsels they receive from other spirits. However, the accuracy with which they describe things depends on the degree of the spirit's evolution. Through the phenomena of somnambulism, whether natural or magnetically induced, Providence furnishes us undeniable evidence of the existence and independence of the soul, and enables us to witness the sublime spectacle of its emancipation. Moreover, through this phenomenon, it opens to us the book of our destiny. When somnambulists describe what is occurring at a distance, it is obvious that they are really seeing it, but not through the eyes of their body. They see themselves at that place after having been transported to it. There is something of themselves present there, and since that something is not their body, it can only be their soul or spirit, while humans get lost in the sublights of an abstract and unintelligible metaphysics in pursuit of the causes of our mental existence. God routinely places in front of them and within reach the simplest and the most patent means for the study of experimental psychology. Shall we stop?
Do you need to start?
Um, Maybe you can start. Sorry, I'm a bit lost with lots of people.
Yeah. So let me just go back here.
Or somnambulistics
Yeah,
see
that's
their own
fine.
spirits.
No, I
That's
just want to
where
go
it
back.
is.
That's
No.
where we started.
Yeah, that's one.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, keep jumping.
Yeah. So it now goes back to the somnambulism and talking about their own spirit and body at the same time. And that's one of the attributes of the perispirit, the perispirit. So the bicorporeal, I don't know how to say it in English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bicorporeidade.
Yeah, so you can be in two places at the same time because you can still be in control of your body and you can act as your perispirit as well. So we have cases during the, uh, the history of the world. I know that we have more cases in the Median's book. So it's talking about one of the saints, I think it's Saint de Padua. I don't know how to say the name in English, but it was one case that he went to the another country. So I believe he's from Spain, and he went to Portugal to defend his father that was being in a jury. I don't know how to say that in English.
Court, he
Court,
was on
yeah.
court, yeah.
And in the same time, he was in a lecture with his students. So they had the same time. He was in both places. So definitely the one that he was in the lecture, it was his body. And then when he went to save his father in the court, it was his first spirit. And it's not easy for everyone because this is an attribute that can be fully used by spirits that are involved, but that's a characteristic.
It's not even common.
Yeah, it's not common for the inferior spirits. Yeah. And here they're saying that sometimes they kind of don't really know from where they are talking about. So sometimes you have your paraspirits and you can perceive something as your paraspirit, and then you can see something or you can interact with another spirit, and then at the same time you receive something, some stimulus, I don't know how to say that in English, but you receive something from your physical body that
signals.
Yes, signal, yeah, from your physical body, and then you can see something on your physical body, you can feel something, and then you jump back to your perispirit. So you have that duality, and that's what it's talking about here. And sometimes it's difficult even for the perispirit at its stage to identify if it's coming from the perispirit or if from the body. And then talks about that it requires that the degree of the evolution, so you get more freedom and you know how to juggle those two sensations easily with your evolution. And let's see if and then when you're in this state, it's explaining a little bit as well, talking about that since you are on the perispirit state and you have more freedom, you can sometimes start remembering about your past lives or receive some knowledge about your future. And of course, all those things is with the permission of God. So if it's not going to be helpful for you to remember your past, or if it's not going to be helpful for you to see your future, you're not going to see, you're not going to remember. And with that information, you'll be able to keep following or keep following the right path, or try to not deviate from that path. So it's just warnings that God and the Spirit speaks to help us. And if you are in that state, and it's going to be good for us, we're going to receive that information. Let's see what else. And then goes back about talking about the let's see. And then it's going to talk about all the things that we see in the somnambulist state, and it's difficult for humans to understand because it's so fast. So sometimes you just get to that state, and then I can visit someone in Brazil, and like in 1 second I will be there, I will be seeing everyone, and I will be even sometimes talking in my corporeal body. You're going to explain things that's happening at the same time in Brazil, and it say that's difficult for them to understand. But nowadays we have the internet and we can talk face to face with everyone at the same time, and you can see. So, for example, if we have another meeting in another spirits group in Brazil, and if they are filming, we can see the room, you can see everyone that's in that meeting, and the same thing that is going to happen when you go to that state. So you basically go there and you'll be able to see everything. So I think nowadays it's a little bit easier to understand that it's possible, because through the electricity we can get there in 1 second, we can see things in real time, but probably 150, 60 years ago, it was harder to imagine those things. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying that can be something that's it's not easy to believe in, and those kind of psychology and physics is.
That's all. Covered everything. probably time. So we didn't finish the chapter, eh?
Yes.
It'll be a little bit more.
At least one more week.
Yeah, one
No,
more will be
probably
done.
two.
Yeah, I think one more. So from ecstasy.
So yeah,
Hello,
from
John.
ecstasy
Perfect.
on
52.
52.
Awesome. That's really good.
So let's just see if there is any questions.
Or any comments?
The other one, Almani.
Oh yeah. And he is talking about the chapter on the gospel, that we don't even need a marriage to be in a reunion like marriage for them back then. Because right now, even here in New Zealand, so you can come to New Zealand in a visa with your partner and doesn't need to be married. So you just need to prove that you are in a stable relationship.
Genuine.
Yeah, genuine relationship, and you'll be able to come to New Zealand as partners.
That's true.
Thank you.
So that even is changing, right?
Yes.
Even the name and the ritual and everything, that's changing. Interesting.
Yes.
Let's see.
Cool. So
Should I put some music?
Slides.
Okay.
yes.
I'll put some nice slides too.
Interesting.
You're welcome. Right. Oops. So after all these readings and comments about these books, after receiving and be reminded of some of the spiritual knowledge, let's then sit comfortably, relax our bodies, elevate our thoughts, our feelings. Let's unite our willingness to help and vibrate for those in need. To start with, let's visualize our beautiful planet Earth. This is school that gives us lessons every day, give us the opportunity of working ourselves. Let's imagine lots of beautiful energy falling on the planet Earth, everywhere, embracing all the countries, all the communities. Let's send our fluids of peace to all the governance, to all the people that have power of command. Remembering especially of places where conflict is more intense and people are suffering because of it. Let's also vibrate to those that are sick, being physically or psychologically, whether they are at their place or hospitals. Let's send our fluids of help and of hope. Let's vibrate to those that don't have a house or a shelter, that they can be blessed they can receive fluids of faith and courage. Faith that the difficulty will pass at some point and better days are to come. Let's vibrate to our brothers and sisters that just pass away to the other plane, that they can receive clarity, understanding, so they can move on and live this next phase of their eternal lives. Let's now remember people that are near us, people from our family, regardless where they are, maybe in another country, far away physically, but that they can feel our love, our kindness, that they can feel that we are close and we are connected by the ties of love. Let's also vibrate to our friends, people from our work, our neighbors. And now let's give some attention to someone that we know that is going through a hard situation. Let's think about that person and send them positive energy, our best fluids, so their situation become better according to God's will. And now, very grateful for the fluids that we all received in this meeting tonight. Grateful for the learnings, for the energy, for everything that we were given here tonight. Would you like to ask our superior spirits to give us courage, to give us faith, so we can cultivate all these virtues and distribute this positivity wherever we go in our days? Would you like to ask permission to God in Jesus to finish another Allan Kardec meeting? Thank you. So good.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Great week. Weekend as well. And see you guys next week.
Oh, awesome.